All right, let's get into the top story now. If you needed any more examples of where America's priorities are, all you need to do is look at President Biden traveling to Ukraine. What a slap in the face. I mean, to kiss the ring of Vladimir Zelensky while the people of East Palestine, Ohio are dealing with potentially one of the worst chemical disasters in American history. And this is not hyperbole at this point, guys. Because now we have the data. And we have a history here of context that we're going to place for you here. Over the past few days, experts have been detailing how the chemical fallout is worse than Chernobyl. That's because of the multi-generational fallout from this train derailment. From the beginning, when we started to get details about this, we had experts on this show talking about that, specifically laying out how this could be multi-generational because of the amount of cleanup involved in these chemicals. And it could be worse than Chernobyl because of how many decades it could take to clean this up. What happens to that town in the meantime then? You know, what happens to those people's homes in the meantime? You have at least 5 chemicals that we know of, right? That we at least know of and we think we know of because they told us they were here, that burned off, and perhaps more that we don't even know were there. Or chemical compounds that were created after the flames, after they were incinerated. And how many chemicals were actually in the trains before these new chemicals were placed in the trains? So a lot of questions that we don't have answers to, and it doesn't seem like we're going to be getting any of them anytime soon. Journalists and health experts now are rightly pointing out that the burning of these toxic chemicals created what are known as chlorinated dioxins. And boy, have I gone over the past few days down a rabbit hole of dioxins in more ways than one. Dioxin is a byproduct of any manufacturing process that involves chlorine. And we know that dioxins were, in fact, in these trains, according to reports, beforehand. They were already there before they were set on fire. We also know that dioxins in this quantity can literally render soil and drinking water for miles, miles and miles and miles away, permanently contaminated. Again, Chernobyl level disaster here. And we know now that the EPA also was told of the incident about 2 hours after it happened. So the Biden administration knew right from the start that this was happening. They can't even pretend they weren't actively involved in this decision to burn these chemicals. And the pictures, of course, of these, of what we've saw from these clouds is just unbelievable.
Now, if we refer, though, to the press release that Norfolk Southern, the train company, was putting out at the time saying we are working with the EPA to do what they call a controlled burn or controlled exposure. I don't remember the terms. They had been saying, so I think this is going to be important when litigation hits. It already has, is if they can prove that they were working with the government, that they gave their sort of scientific models to the government, said, we have to burn this or else. And so the EPA then put out this statement a few days later saying, oh, this is bad. We're going to hold you liable. This is worse than we thought it was. Well, but if the EPA knew all along, then it's a CYA type of situation, then who are these people going to be able to hold liable? Yeah. Norfolk Southern, if they were working with the government, if they had permission, if they were working with the EPA. Now the EPA turning around saying, oh, this is worse than our models. We're going to hold you liable. We don't like this. Then the question here that lingers is who is liable, who passed the buck, and who can people actually get money and answers from? Right, because if both governors were consulted on this, both Pennsylvania and Ohio governors were consulted on this and actually issued, get out of town orders. So they knew about this. They knew what was coming. Yeah. So they can't just sit back and say, we didn't know, we weren't really consulted on this. And of course, Governor Mike DeWine stepping in and basically saying, absolutely, like he's the authority in authorizing the burning. But the EPA knew within 2 hours. So the Biden administration knew about this right from the get-go. Very little time had elapsed before the EPA was notified under the Biden administration. What's stunning, though, we know that when they were told about this 2 hours afterwards, so the Biden administration knew from the start what was happening. They can't pretend that they weren't involved. They can't pretend that they were, as we heard from Pete Buttigieg, we're just deferring to local state authorities to handle this. Right? Again, what turns my stomach about this, though, is that they can show it in a court of law. And so when you go to sue them, They can say, we got permission from the government. Our models showed that it would blow everybody else up if we didn't burn it ourselves. The government gave us permission. So all of these things are things that could potentially be exculpatory when it comes to liability if they can prove it.
Yeah.
And so this is another thing that will leave these people high and dry if there's nobody there to, if they can just keep passing the buck of responsibility.
Well, and of course they're in collusion with them anyway, right? How much money are these companies actually giving to these these candidates anyway over the years? So, Vanguard, BlackRock, all of these guys that own these companies are just funneling money to these candidates in the first place. So they're all in cahoots from the very beginning. What's stunning though is that we can't find any evidence. Still to this day, this afternoon, we can't find any evidence that anyone has been testing for dioxin contamination. There is zero evidence that anyone has done tests for dioxins at this point, which is unbelievable. There are in fact no, and I mean no, safe levels of exposure for dioxins. None. And as these chemical experts point out, that dioxin is a multi-generational genetic and hormonal toxin. Investigative reporter Eric Capolino has been covering government cover-ups for years. His work is fantastic. He's been looking at chemical spills, chemical dumps, since the early 1980s. He was 19 years old back in 1983 when he first covered and exposed the town of Love Canal in New York. It had to be resettled, of course, because it was built on toxic chemicals, and the government hid it there in the 1950s and 1960s. And so, it started leaching out, and we had to close this whole town down because of all of the devastating carcinogenic effects of these chemicals that were leaching out. Eric reports that real testing involves sending samples from the same location to 2 different independent labs that are under different contracts, he writes, so that Norfolk Southern couldn't corrupt the data. Like, we're just going to send it to our lab at Norfolk Southern. We're going to take care of it. This is called split sampling, and any other testing is subject to manipulation, basically. So we're going to trust the train company to do this testing? Sure. Would you? So these split samples aren't happening. Isn't that amazing? Like, this could be one of the largest ecological chemical disasters in American history. They're not doing it. Why? Do you trust the Norfolk Southern is handling all of this? I don't. Eric also points out that this is how everyone should be dressed in East Palestine, Ohio right now. Take a look at your screen. If you're driving and listening, they're wearing hazmat suits, full hazmat suits, trying to clean down certain areas near the train tracks, near the train. This is how he says everyone should be dressed. And by the way, he's not the only one. A number of other health experts saying the same thing, confirming that. These workers know how toxic this city is now. That's why they're dressed this way. They know because they have a history of these burns and chemicals destroying whole towns, and then are covered up by companies and governments. Eric explains this in his work. He says this is how these chemicals work. While dioxin can be an acute poison, particularly to babies, fetuses, young children, and animals, it's rarely so in adults, so it doesn't really present itself as a poison. Rather, it's a hormonal toxin. In at least three-generation multi-generational toxin, and a cancer inducer and cancer promoter. All of these are related, he writes. So many generations will experience this cancer-creating toxin. No wonder President Biden went to Ukraine instead of Ohio. He knows how dangerous it is. There's frankly no way to keep you free of this chemical if you're there. That's the point.
Well, and I don't know if you saw the local coverage, but there were people that their homes were completely closed up, no air, no windows open or anything, and they had like this stuff caked on all the stuff in their house, and they were talking about when they moved it raised those particles, and people were having to go to the hospital from breathing that in. I don't know if it's that chemical. I don't know if it's the same thing, but then also the company is going door to door and telling people they will help them clean that up, and they have to sign this paper, and in that paper they are agreeing to not hold the Norfolk liable for the damages.
Yeah. And this is the thing we're saying, like, don't sign these papers. And that's what they've done. And that's what these companies do. They'll go into these towns and they'll offer you like $100,000 to shut up. $100,000, right? And you can't say anything. It'll be an NDA. It'll be a non-disclosure agreement. You'll sign it, and you're sort of basically signing your life away. And for a lot of these people, and we're going to get into some of the home values here in a second. For a lot of these people, this is, of course, life-changing money, right?
Yeah.
But what happens if your life is now cut short because of this? As people are reporting in the chat, and we've heard this from other reports, people are coughing up blood in this area.
Oh, my God.
And of course, it's just been a disaster. People, as like David was saying, like, people going in and finding like their mouths are tingling but it's what you don't see. That's the point, right? You can, some of the immediate effects, you can the smell and taste and so forth. It's the long-term hormonal cancer causing effects that you just don't see.
And I mean, we're going to see pretty soon when the spring planting season is coming, what that town looks like, what natural organic substances are going to grow and what are not.
And there's state parks nearby. Like if you look at the map into Pennsylvania on that side, of course, there are state game lands there as well. So people who are going and hunting and doing bison hunting, venison hunting, deer hunting season for many families that rely on this, get one, they end up getting one animal for the season. And then that's what they can sustain an entire family. Well, what if that one animal is now a contaminated animal as a result? In that same area.
Most likely.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Well, and I was going to point out the Chernobyl. I know you guys didn't watch that show yet, but there are people that after that explosion, they were very far away, and they're standing on this bridge, and these ashes are falling, and they're just like, whoa, this is so beautiful. Like, it's like snow coming down. And years later, all those people had cancer. So it's like, this could be years down the line that people don't realize the stuff they're breathing in is long term, and they might not have any of the short term effects, but like long term, it could be all kinds of things.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, because particulates, and we don't even know, what gets caused, again, in the water, in the groundwater, and in the soil specifically. So no wonder President Biden went to Ukraine instead of Ohio, because there's no way to keep the guy safe. And literally less, you can't have a president walking around wearing one of these hazmat suits. I mean, can you imagine President Biden walking around in one of these things?
Yes, I absolutely can imagine it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
but that's what you would literally have to do to make sure that he's 100% safe.
And it would, I mean, when he's not in a suit, he's a bit, like, it might be better for his optics.
Yeah, but they could be literally like, hey, that's Biden in there. That's Biden in that hazmat suit. He can say and
do fewer creepy things if we wrap him up like that. So this is a perfect press opportunity.
Just sound air raid silence.
Go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, but it would send the wrong impression, though, wouldn't it? If he showed up
exactly.
in that, it would
it's
send
about
the impression
optics.
that somebody screwed up. Exactly.
So
you can't have that. That would be
they're in quite a pickle here. And we're going to get into Buttigieg in a minute, because the reason, the transportation secretary hasn't gone yet, I mean, and now we know he's going tomorrow, but why wait so long, right? You know what the problem is. You're being told not to go. So it turns out that this isn't the first time the government has destroyed a town in the Midwest. And by the way, I should point out, I have a bunch of reports this afternoon from people in the UK, and were sending messages to us telling us that because of the wafting of this cloud, that, it's now traveled east. Of course, it went through like Washington, D.C. People are saying based on the jet stream and so where it would have gone, people in the UK are reporting weird film on their cars. Like after rain, there's like a weird film on windows and cars that they've never seen before.
Are they on that latitude?
I don't know. And again, I'm just reporting what they're telling. Unless anyone wants to test it.
I mean, not that clouds follow latitude lines, I know.
Right, and whatever gets up into that jet stream. But anyway, right. I would love to know if someone in the UK wants to actually test their windows or whatever residue is on there, and let us know. But anyway, so it went airborne. It wafted hundreds of miles away. People described awful taste in their mouths, tingling lips, hundreds of miles away from this. Eventually, it'll drift away and dissipate. But of course, the chemicals in the ground and the groundwater will last decades. That's the real story here. It could render the town totally unlivable. Turns out that this isn't the first time that the government destroyed a town in the Midwest. An entire town contaminated by dioxins in the soil and the drinking water. People dying early thanks to inexplicable cancers. Sound familiar? I have an idea where they came from, though, that maybe it could have been that plant down the street that was making Agent Orange. How about that? The government then decided to spray the whole town in Agent Orange. Yeah, we're just going to spray the whole town in Agent Orange, see how that goes.
Okay.
Smart move, government. The town of Times Beach, Missouri was the town. Just one of them. By the way, there was more. This is just one example I wanted to highlight here. The dioxins in the soil would years later have to be dug up and incinerated. And likely the same thing is going to have to happen in East Palestine, Ohio. Ohio rendering the town, they're basically rendering this town useless in Ohio. So Truth Steam Media produced a great documentary on the Times Beach dioxin disaster. Here's a clip. Watch.
When I was a little girl, I remember driving on I-44 with my mom past the desolate remains of what used to be Times Beach. The street sat empty save for the dark, windowless husks of decaying, abandoned houses. And she would always tell me the story about how that was where everyone had to be evacuated because of toxic waste contamination, even though I was barely old enough to understand what that meant at first. Every time we'd drive by on our way out into St. Louis County to visit family, I'd get that tingly feeling in the pit of my stomach, knowing we were going to pass by it. By 1985, Times Beach was disincorporated, evacuated, and quarantined, save for one elderly couple who refused to leave. The town wasn't demolished until 1992. More than 265,000 tons of tainted soils were incinerated at the site beginning in 1996, and by 1999 all was declared well, and the state opened up a Route 66 themed park where the town once stood.
So it's amazing. And they don't even really, in this Route 66 museum, they don't even hardly comment about it at all. They're like, here's Route 66. There used to be a town here. It's not here anymore. It's totally gone. So what will happen now? Perhaps
like
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say that's like the theme park equivalent of building your housing development on a cemetery, right? We all saw how that happened in Poltergeist. Like, what? Like, who would decide that? I would just leave it alone.
Yeah,
That's insane.
Well, and that's exactly what happened at Love Canal in New York. It's like, okay, here's an idea. We'll take what's left over from the Manhattan Project and we'll bury it right here, and then we'll build a town on top of it and see how that turns out. Didn't turn out very well for the people that lived there. So, the question is now, like, what happens now in East Palestine, Ohio? And perhaps more of what we're already seeing, which is cover up, denial, everything's fine, lies, distractions with other stories. I mean, President Biden flew to Ukraine instead of flying to Ohio. Like, shows you where his priorities are, right?
The Associated Press, sort of congratulated them like, oh, you really pulled this off. We didn't know you were coming. They snuck him out at 3:30 in the morning out of the White House. It was a surprise to all of us. And then, that was amazing. Thanks for that surprise for us.
Yeah, it's so amazing. 500, another round of millions of dollars, like $500 million bucks, in addition to the $140 billion that we've already sent to Ukraine, because we have to make sure that Ukraine's railroads are state of the art and running on time. We have to make sure that all of that work that Hunter Biden did in Ukraine isn't for nothing.
But he can, Ukraine, such a war zone, he can walk around there freely.
He's fine walking around there.
Totally fine. Ohio, he cannot go.
Thank you, Putin.
Right.
Yeah, thanks Putin for just like holding off on the, just hold off while the president's there, and then, we'll sound the air raid sirens. Nothing's coming in. They haven't gone off once, but we'll sound them off now. But thank you, Putin, for holding back.
Yeah, no trouble. Yeah, Putin's such a threat that President Biden and his whole entourage can fly in there. No trouble at all there. So Biden won't go to Ohio. Well, what about Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, the man who's responsible for our rail infrastructure? When will he go? A reporter from the Daily Caller caught up with Mayor Pete last night to ask him that question while he was out for a stroll on the town with his husband. Watch.
Secretary, what do you have to say? Hi, how are you?
Good.
Jenny here at the Daily Caller News Foundation. What do you have to say to the folks in Ohio, East Palestine, who are suffering right now?
Well, I'd refer you to about a dozen interviews I've given today, and if you'd like to arrange a conversation, be sure to reach out to our press office, but I'm not going to have that conversation with you. Just walk
You
down
don't
the
have a
street
message
here.
for them?
I do, and I shared it with the press many times today. I'd refer you to those comments.
Would you mind sharing it with us?
No, I'm going to refer you to the comments that I made to the press because right now I'm taking some personal time and I'm walking down the street.
Are you going down there?
What's that?
Are you going down there at all?
Yep, I am.
When are you going?
I'll share that when I'm ready.
Okay,
I'll talk down the
thank
street.
you.
Can I get a photo of you?
Yeah.
Can I take a photo of you? So then he snaps a photo of her, the reporter. Like he's that threatened. I need to take a photo
He's
of
got to
you.
put the facial recognition in his system at home.
Right.
Yeah, I got to find out who this person was.
I was gonna
This
say, we
vicious daily caller reporter asking
Like,
tough
you want to do it
questions.
selfie style? Let's do it that way.
Right. That's what I would have done.
We should keep an eye on her. Actually, like
That's what I was
out who that
thinking.
reporter was. Yeah.
That was a little President Snow. I'm telling you, everything feels like the Hunger Games. I need to give it a rest.
You do. You need to take a break from that. So Mayor Pete said multiple times, I refer you to the TV interviews I did today for your answers. And he said it kind of smugly, like up to the 12 or so interviews I did today. Like, your life is so tough that you sat in a chair and did television interviews. Like, your life is so tough compared to what people are going through in East Palestine, Ohio right now. He appeared on a bunch of state-run media channels like ABC, CBS News. Here's ABC giving us consoling words from Mayor Pete, who says, hey, look, don't worry about this disaster. I was a mayor of my hometown for 8 years. We dealt with a lot of big disasters. Watch.
The administration has come under some fire for its response. The mayor of East Palestine has said it took nearly 2 weeks for the White House to contact him. There were shouts of "Where's Pete Buttigieg?" at a town hall meeting last week. What's your response to that? When are you going to go to East Palestine?
Well, I am planning to go, and our folks were on the ground from the first hours. I do want to stress that the NTSB needs to be able to do its work independently. But when I go, the focus is going to be on action. Look, I was mayor of my hometown for 8 years. We dealt with a lot of disasters, natural and human.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to stay out of the way of the NTSB, as if a transportation secretary is going to literally shut down the whole town. If a transportation secretary shuts down the infrastructure, then we have a problem, right? Like, that he going there is a problem for the National Transportation Safety Board. Really? He's going there. And then, oh, by the way, I was mayor of my own hometown, and we had disasters. Yeah. You had some stoplights that were broken. Nothing like
he
this.
acts like it's gonna, like he needs a photer's guide to go and read up on this type of vacation. Like, oh, let me see where there is to eat there.
Yeah, I want to check the hotel situation first and the Yelp reviews. Go ahead, Phil.
I grew up about about 25, 30-minute drive from South Bend, Indiana, and my mom still lives about 30-minute drive from there. And no, they didn't. Nothing even close to this caliber of disaster happened in South Bend. Not even close.
Okay, we call BS on that one.
Heavy wind and snow, and that's it.
Yeah, he had some salt trucks that were delayed from getting the salt out during a snowstorm. So that's the disaster. We've had a lot of disasters. I can deal with this one. So when are you going to go? Well, it turns out we do know now that he's going to go tomorrow. He did announce just about 4 hours ago. We found out that he is going to go tomorrow after some hemming and hawing, but not before a lot of pressure from media and local media in particular that was pushing him on this. But here's CBS pushing him on this. When are you going to go, actually? Because this is like now how many weeks? February 3rd? I mean, what are you waiting for? 19 days now? How long until you go? Didn't we learn anything from George W. Bush flying over Hurricane Katrina and looking out the window after being at a fundraiser with Arnold Schwarzenegger playing guitar on stage? Like, point. You go, right? If you're saying everything's fine, then show us without a hazmat suit on. Everything's fine. People don't have to worry. Go. Why don't you go and dig up some soil while you're there too? Here he is on CBS. Watch.
And you have said that you would visit East Palestine when the time is right, but it's been 2 weeks since this derailment. When is the time right?
So I'm planning to go, and when I do, it will be focused on action, not on politics, not on show. In the early days, I have been respecting the role that the independent NTSB plays and staying out of their way, but we are now entering
the policy phase of our response to this. And even as NTSB continues finalizing their work, this is the right time for us to be looking at immediate steps from USDOT.
But, sir, you ran for president. You understand politics better than most, and you know the importance of showing up. So why not go sooner to show people on the ground the efforts being made by the administration?
Well, again, the administration was on the ground from day one. I have followed the normal practice of transportation secretaries in the early days after a crash, allowing NTSB to lead the safety work and staying out of their way. But I am very eager to have conversations with people in East Palestine about how this has impacted them. And again, when I'm there, the focus is going to be on results. It's going to be on work that needs to be done, because one thing I saw as a mayor dealing with multiple disasters is that there's two kinds of people who show up in the aftermath of a disaster. People who are there because they have a specific role to play, and they're there to play their role and do the work and help the community. And people who are there because they want to be seen being there and they want to look good. When I'm there, it's going to be about action.
Okay,
action.
Good. No more political stunts.
Action.
He didn't ask her to send him a selfie after they were done.
Yeah, I need to take a picture of you for asking me that question. So then, but it was actually local news that was pushing the transportation secretary even harder than mainstream media. So here's a local station pushing him on this question. Watch.
So I'll follow that up with asking, will you be heading there?
I am planning to come. I've been careful to respect the independent role of the NTSB and stay out of their way. But we're now entering the phase where it's about policy. It's about what my department does.
So I love the continued reading off of a cue card. I'm going to go there. I'm planning to go, but I want to respect the individual, the autonomy of the NTSB. I want to stay out of their way. I want to keep staying out of their way. When I go, it's going to be about action. Like just repeating that same talking point on every news or every news station.
Thing.
Yeah. What does that even mean? Perhaps the clearest indication, though, of city's health is its real estate market, right? And do people want to move there or move away from a city as a result of it? In the case of Missouri, where dioxin poison destroyed the town of Times Beach, you won't find anything there because the town has been destroyed. It doesn't exist anymore. Trying to do a search on Zillow for Times Beach, Missouri, you'll find nothing. You won't find anything. But what about East Palestine? So I decided to take a look. So take a look at what Zillow prices are this afternoon in East Palestine, Ohio. Let's zoom in here on East Palestine. You can see a number of houses for sale and price drops. Number of price drops now. Now, this one's a little bit outside of the city. Here's a 4-bedroom, 4-bath. You can see that's been on the market now for 7 days. They're trying to sell their house. They're like, oh, crap, we better get out of here. Here's others now. Here's a new construction, $499,000. Well, I wonder, here's one, a price drop. They just cut the price $25,000 on February 21st. I'm sorry, but on all these other houses that have been sitting on the market for 100 days or longer in this town. And by the way, 3-bedroom, 2-bath for $70,000.
I know.
I mean,
I was going to say that'd be almost $1 million out here.
Well, it's a steal, right? For like an investment property or something like that. But here, look, price cut $10,000. 61 days. I'm telling you, these homes are not going to sell now, unfortunately. And some of these homes that have been sitting on the market for 75 days, like we are in a housing crisis in the United States. We need 5 million homes. And the fact that these have been sitting here and are going to be sitting here probably forever, unfortunately, for these people.
Unless BlackRock is interested in some
rental properties.
Because there will be a town. People still, I don't know.
Ugh, it's really awful. Go ahead, Phil.
And that's the thing. Like, if you have to understand, it's like these people that live there now are stuck there.
Yeah.
Because who's gonna buy their property? Who's gonna move? Who's gonna want to move there? So they are literally stuck there unless they just happen to have enough cash lying around to buy another house. Which who does?
Right.
You know, they're trapped.
Yeah, and these houses, like that's a great, and that'd be a great investment property for someone. If someone's saying, I want to, or to move there, I want to buy that for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for $70,000 in a 7 out of 10 school district, like not bad. But now the school was like ground zero for where these chemicals were.
Right.
And the land, who's going to buy this? Who's going to move there? Who's going to sell it?
And probably a lot of these people saw their balance sheets go up during the pandemic when home values were surging. And now they're seeing that just sort of swept out from under them. So where they thought they may have had wealth inside their own primary home, they no longer do.
And a $25,000 price drop on a home that's that cheap already?
Right.
Like, that is huge. And this is, I mean, just devastating for these people. Go ahead, David.
I was going to say, there's another incident that I can't mention the incident because it'll start a hellfire, but there was an area where when the government was going in and trying to, get people to stop talking about things, they paid off houses. They paid off a whole bunch of houses. So you were talking about them getting $100,000. That's another bribe they can give them is, hey, we'll pay off your house.
Yeah.
And you go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's exactly what they'll do.
Somewhere else.
We'll buy your house, and then they're going to tear them down and burn them. That's exactly what's going to happen. So we'll see. Mayor Pete Buttigieg is heading to East Palestine, Ohio tomorrow.
Can't wait to see his outfit.
We'll see if anyone wants to take some selfies with him. But tomorrow, remember, he said it's all about action. So then maybe we'll find out what tests are being done on the soil, how much dioxin poisoning is there, and if he's going to be in a hazmat suit, which anyone who studies these chemicals knows is the only way to be, safe and effective. So maybe that's why he wasn't going. So we'll see. Wait until that cloud blew out of the way before they went there. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.